Good morning, youth. How are you? How has your half term been? I hope that your first week back at school, back at home school, is going okay. So, today is going to be the first of a two-parter for our Sunday mornings, and it's all about keep focused. I wonder, how has it been for you studying at home? Do you find it's easier to be focused at home or harder? And I wonder why. I wonder if you were to pause this video and you could think of 3 reasons why. Either it's easier or harder, and then come back. So press pause. Okay, so I wonder what those reasons might be. For me, I used to find that, if I'm honest, when I was at school, I'd get a bit bored in the lessons because you'd have to go at the pace of what the teacher and the rest of the class was doing. And I often used to find myself looking out the window and daydreaming. I know it's terrible, but that's just how I was. So actually, I wonder if working at home for me might have been easier. And I must say that I've been finding working at home during lockdown for the church has actually been quite good because there's been less distractions for me here. I've been able to work at my pace, and also, if I'm honest, like when I was at school, one of the best things about school for me was seeing my friends. And obviously I don't get to see my work friends so much when I'm at home, but actually it means I actually get more done. I wonder if you feel the same. I wonder if any of your reasons match up with mine, or if you've got any different ones. If you join us for the chat on Friday, then we can talk about that then. So we are going to watch a video from Youth for Christ all about keeping focused. So the video is going to come on and then we will have a look at some questions. So here you go.
Hey guys, my name is Beth, and over the next couple of weeks we are going to be exploring in these videos about what it means to keep Jesus at the centre of our lives through keeping focused on him, keeping our eyes on him, and also staying connected with him. And so this week we're going to jump in looking at keeping focused on Jesus and why that's important. But to kick us off, we're going to look at a story from the Gospel of Matthew. Now, Matthew was one of Jesus' 12 disciples, one of his closest followers, and he wrote down loads of stuff that went on in Jesus' life, and that is what makes the book Matthew. And the story we're going to look at is from Matthew 14:22 to 33. Now, this story actually begins at the end of another story. If you're familiar with the story of the feeding of the 5,000, this story takes place just after it. And so the disciples and Jesus have been around many people, thousands of people. Jesus has just done a miracle and fed loads of people. It's been incredible, but probably also really exhausting and tiring. And so Jesus goes off into the mountains to pray and to be alone. And he sends the disciples to cross the lake in a boat. Now, when the disciples are on the lake, the Bible tells us that the wind and the waves get choppy and the boat was being buffeted by waves. Essentially, there's a storm. And just before dawn, when it's still pretty dark, they see a figure walking across the water towards the boat. And at first they think that it's a ghost, but then they actually realise it's Jesus, and Jesus tells them not to be afraid. Now, Peter, who is one of Jesus' disciples, he's a pretty bold guy if you read a lot of stories about him. He says, "If it's you, tell me to come to you on the water." And so Jesus tells him to come. And so he does. He climbs out the boat and he puts his feet onto the water, and he actually manages to take a few steps on the water, which is insane. He's got his eyes on Jesus. He's walking towards him. He's actually doing it. But then he sinks into the water. Now, the reason he sinks is because the Bible tells us that he looked at the waves and he got afraid and then he sank into them. But the good news is that Jesus reached out his hand, picked him back up, and they got in the boat. So all ended well. But you see, Peter had his eyes focused on Jesus. He was focused on him. He was walking towards him. But then the waves around him distracted him and he sank. And the thing is, we can have our own waves in life as well, our own distractions or fears or worries. It could be schoolwork or family issues. It could be illness. It could be actually good things like entertainment or friends or boyfriends or girlfriends that distract us from Jesus. It could be that actually we don't want to go to him because we don't want to think about difficult questions. There are all sorts of different things that can be our waves. But the thing is that these things that distract us, any worries or fears, they can, a bit like the waves for Peter, they can swallow us up, they can consume our thoughts and our actions and our lives, but we're not meant to do that. We're meant to focus on Jesus and keep walking towards him. Now, the interesting thing about this story is that Jesus is kind of famous for saying a particular phrase in this story where he says, "O ye of little faith, why did you doubt?" Now, this comes across as like a bit of a weird thing to say, or potentially a bad thing on Peter's part, that he's got such little faith. But there's another part in the Bible where Jesus says, actually, if you've got faith as small as a mustard seed, and mustard seeds are tiny, then you could tell a mountain to move and it would move. So although Peter's faith is small, it is powerful. And so what I want you to know is that you don't have to feel like you've got everything sorted, like you're the best person with the best kind of relationship with Jesus, or whether you've got the best faith of anyone you know. That doesn't matter. It's about your heart and about just keep setting your eyes on Jesus. And so there's three things really that I want you guys to take away from this. The first is that Peter looked towards Jesus, put his eyes on Jesus in the middle of a storm, whether life is good or bad, easy or difficult, peaceful or chaotic. Keep your eyes on Jesus. Number two, keeping our eyes on Jesus isn't meant to be something complicated. It's simply focusing on him, taking time for him in whatever way that looks like for us, through prayer or worship music or reading our Bible, checking in with him a few times a day, making sure that actually our thoughts aren't consumed by things that distract us or worry us, but are consumed by Jesus, that we keep trying to get back on track with that as well. And number three is that in the story, like the water that's surrounding the boat and the waves and water will always be there and will always come and go on that lake that the disciples were in. And in our lives, there'll always be waves that come and go for us too. But the importance is being determined to not let them swallow us up, to know that they're there, but keep focused on Jesus anyway. Because we're meant to live a life in relationship with him, and he wants good things for us and wants us to metaphorically walk on water towards him. And so this week we've also got a bunch of discussion questions and a couple of activities, including some around prayer, for you guys to kind of process some of these things a little bit further. But until next week, I hope you have a good week. Bye.
So, for those questions, do you think it's easy to keep focused on Jesus or not? I wonder what you think. For me, I'm going to let you in on how I sometimes am. There are sometimes days where after I do my morning devotional time, so I take time to read the Bible, do some journaling and pray within that, I will go to work, and even though my work is in a church, even though I am looking at God's stuff all day, I can actually get to the end of the day sometimes and I haven't even connected with God that day. I've not even prayed about what I've been doing or really thought about him. I might have been thinking about the Bible, I might have been putting lessons together, but I didn't actually connect with God. I wonder if you might be the same, that when you go to school, that sometimes you can go through a whole day and not even think about God. So what is it that helps us to get focused, and what is it that means we lose our focus? Also, I wonder how well you know Jesus, because he says he wants to be our friend. And actually, there's no point in focusing on someone who we don't know, who we don't trust, who we just can't rely on. So actually, how well do you know him? And I really encourage you to invest in that relationship and really try to get to know him, because he's so worth knowing. He's worth knowing more than any other person. There's no person like him, and he is God as well, and it's just amazing. So we looked at that story in the video about Peter and the waves, and I wonder what waves there are in your life. And I have a task for you. So can you grab a piece of paper? It can be plain preferably, but it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's lined or plain, and get some pens. I did it with some coloured pens, so you might want to get some colouring pens, and then come back. So press pause now and then come back and we'll carry on. So what I did is what I want you to do is I want you to look at what the distractions are in your life and write them on a piece of paper and draw waves around them. I'll show you what I've done. Can you see that? I can't see the screen. So let me just run through what mine are and it might help you. So the top one I've got there is feelings. So sometimes I feel like Jesus isn't near me. Sometimes I feel really fed up, or I feel worried about stuff, and those feelings can distract me from Jesus. Or I've got being busy. Now, I know you guys, with the amount of schoolwork you keep on getting sent home, I'm sure that you know about being busy and how that can really take our focus off the Lord. And actually, I find for me, I work in a church, so I'm doing good things all the time. But actually, even really good things that you do, if you're not spending enough time with the Lord, it can be a distraction. So I wonder if you might think about putting something like that down. The next one I've put is entertainment, because I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll just binge watch something on Amazon Prime or Netflix or whatever it is that you like. There's nothing wrong with that, but there is if it gets your focus off Jesus all the time. Another thing I've put in the middle there is family troubles. Often, and I wonder if in lockdown you're finding this, but often arguments and tensions and worries in your family can make you feel very worried, very upset, very concerned about the future. And I wonder if that could be something that could be a distraction for you. And the other things I've put there is snacks and food. You all know how much I love snacks and food. Well, my mind, if it's not on Jesus, is often on food. So yeah, that's my problem. And then I've got thoughts, fears, and comparison. And I wonder how often our fears are bigger than our faith sometimes, or it can feel that way. So have a go and get yourself some waves like this. And then what we're going to do, once you'll finish that, is I have got my black pen, because what I want to do, and bear with me while I just do what I'm going to do, and I think you're going to do this much better than me, because I obviously haven't got much time because I'm actually being filmed for it, but you can pause and do this. But I am just writing the name Jesus over the top. Can you see? Yes, Linz, we can see. Over the top, because we need to keep our eyes on Jesus and not on all the waves. Now, what we see is that sometimes Jesus can make the waves go away, but often some of these things in our lives might not just go away immediately. So actually, even when the waves are there, we need to keep our eyes on Jesus. And what I suggest is that you could put this somewhere to remind you, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus. And I would love to see your version. So if you've done one and you join us on Friday, will you bring it so we can all have a look, and maybe we can discuss some of the things, some of the waves that you've put there, and see if other people have got the same ones, or see if anyone's got the same ones as me, or some people might think my ones are silly. But anyway, I'd love to hear from you, particularly my snacks and food one. That seems a bit weird. But anyway, yeah, we'll do that together, and that'll be really good. Another thing is that I really would recommend, particularly if you're only watching this on a Sunday, a link's going to come up at the bottom of the screen to another YouTube clip, and it's all about Jesus and Peter walking on the water, and I watched it a minute ago and it's absolutely brilliant. I think it will be really helpful for you to watch, so have a watch of that, and yeah, I hope that you find it really, really useful. So I hope that you don't feel at the moment like Jesus isn't close, but I do want you to know that sometimes that is going to happen in life. It does sometimes feel like Jesus isn't close, but we have to put our faith over our feelings, and that's where knowing Jesus and knowing the promises in his word are really important, because our feelings can sometimes feel so big. When we're feeling worried, sometimes that can almost feel bigger than our faith in Jesus. Sometimes when we're feeling scared, again, that can sometimes feel bigger, but feelings aren't fact. The facts are in the Bible, and that is where we put our faith, not in our feelings, but in the Bible, in what Jesus said, in the promises that God has made. And when we put our faith in what God has said, we are also putting our faith in who he is, because the Bible tells us again and again that God speaks truth, and when he speaks a promise to us, he is faithful. So I want you to know that. I want you to know one of my favourite promises from the Bible. I've probably told you this 100 times, but hopefully then you'll remember it. But God says, I will never, never leave you. I will never, ever abandon you. And I just think that is so wonderful, because sometimes when it does feel like we might be left alone, we might be drifting alone, actually, it's really important to speak out the truth. And so if you ever feel like that, you can say, God, you promised you will never leave me and you will never abandon me. And that's a truth that's in Hebrews 13, I think it's verse 5. Go and check it out, and then you can always tell me off if I'm wrong. So I'm going to go now, but I just want to pray for you before I do. So let's just pray together. Father, thank you that we can trust you. Thank you that no matter how big the waves look, we can fix our eyes on Jesus, who is trustworthy and powerful to either stop the waves or to give us peace in the waves and save us in the waves. So, Lord, I pray that everyone hearing this will be able to do that, and you'll remind them of that in the biggest of waves, in the biggest of storms, that they're never alone. In Jesus' name, amen. See you soon. Bye-bye.